Welcome to the Just Ingredients podcast. I'm Cara Lynn, and here we talk all things nourishing to the mind, body, and soul. This is a place where you can find just good ingredients to life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Charlie Fagenholz to the show. He is a holistic physician trained in chiropractic, frequency, and functional medicine. He helps people uncover the root causes of their health issues through structural, chemical, and emotional healing. With a wait list of over 30,000, his practice is now closed, but his In the Trenches membership brings his teachings, tools, and trusted protocols to thousands online and through educating on podcasts like this one. So welcome to the show, Dr. Charlie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, like I told you earlier before we started, I'm really excited for this show because I've never had a guest on here really talking about frequency medicine. And I love energy work, and we just don't really talk about it much. So I'm excited to delve into it. But before we delve into it, will you just tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee, originally from Chicago, and did a short stint in California. So I've been a little bit around. And originally I was going to go to pharmacy school and did some job shadowing and found out in like the first 2 minutes that that just wasn't a profession for me. I thought that growing up, getting sick all the time, that pharmaceuticals were the answer. And turns out that they weren't. But did some job shadowing of other doctors that I had been exposed to throughout my like sports playing years in high school. And when I shadowed my chiropractor, it was the first person where people walked in feeling crummy and left feeling really good. And I felt like I could do that the rest of my life. And so it wasn't frequency medicine at all. It was straight up chiropractic. And then when I got into school, I was introduced to frequency medicine and did over 1,000 hours of seminars on the weekends to really dive in, because I was the youngest in the room always. There's a lot of doctors in the room, and they'd be from all over the country. And the stories that they were saying about, the patients who flew in from around the world to get this or that. And I just knew that I was in a very special room with special people, and I just tried to soak up as much as I could. And that was, 2013, 2012. So it's been a little while now, and now I am in practice, sharing it with everyone else.
Oh, I love it. Well, like I said, I'm excited to talk to you about frequency medicine, but I know some people really know that world and others don't. And so let's just simplify things for people. What is frequency medicine?
Yeah, so it's essentially, it's any type of medicine that's going to evaluate the frequency of your cells. Einstein, Tesla, for years talked about how frequency is everything. Everything is atoms and, neutrons, electrons, and taking everyone back to high school chemistry and physics. But it's so true. And one of the things that when I was reading about it really hit home for me was that every disease or disorder that someone has is the result of electromagnetic frequency changes in their cells, which is frequency. And so any type of frequency medicine is something that can measure those frequencies. So our body will give off distress signals in the form of essentially electricity. And, I use muscle testing. Other people can use scans like the Quest 4. Hair analysis is a frequency scan. Even blood work is a frequency scan. But when you hear frequency medicine, you think more along the lines of testing through muscle testing or devices, like the offshoot of different frequencies of distress signals from the cells of the body.
Okay, so I'm really curious about how you go about doing the testing, because I think some people might know what muscle testing is, but I get blood work done yearly and never has that ever been discussed in a frequency terms. And so let's start with these different testing rules. Like maybe let's start with muscle testing. Just explain to us what that is.
It's a great place to start because it's kind of the bridge into frequency medicine for a lot of people. Because there's a lot of nutritionists and people doing supplements that will muscle test you for them. And a lot of people are like, well, they just pushed on my arm and I was, I could hold strong. I couldn't hold strong. They told me I needed these supplements. And there's no really like explanation of what's going on. And so in a nutshell, what's happening is every time that you put something either in your mouth or around your body, you bring it up to what we call neurological awareness, because all of this is nervous system. It's a function of the nervous system. And this is what I call functional neurology, essentially. And so What happens is anytime that you put something on the body, whether it's a supplement, whether it is a vial, which I have one right next to me, we'll get into what these are. They look like little perfume tester kits, but they are homeopathically usually prepared frequency vials of foods, infections, metals, hormones, you name it, neurotransmitters. And with this frequency, because everything vibrates at a certain frequency. So if you can capture it with homeopathic frequencies and put it on water, then you're able to literally test it like you are holding that exact thing, which is really, really fascinating. So, anyway, so what happens is you put it up to the body, and the body has neurological awareness. And if it is a stressor, say it's like, I'm sure your listeners talk about parasites or viruses or anything like that. If the body can't adapt to that, which means that it is affecting their physiology right now, what happens is when you are muscle testing, your body can't generate enough ATP or motor neurons, which is going to confuse people, but just look at it as enough energy to allow you to hold strong, to have a muscle lock. And if it can adapt, then it's going to hold strong and lock. But if it can't, then you are not going to be able to. And you are going to test what we call weak. And then it is up to the doctor to find what's going to help you overcome that. Is it a supplement? Is it an emotional correction? Is it a food sensitivity that you're eating? And it's kind of like a stethoscope. It's a stethoscope is only as good as the person who's listening, right? It's a tool, but it's only as good as the ears that are listening to it. So it's not like you can, teach a monkey how to muscle test and then all of a sudden they're experts in frequency medicine. It really comes down to the practitioner, the provider, to have their wisdom and their knowledge while using this tool.
Okay, so few questions about muscle testing. First of all, you said everything has a frequency. So we're saying like every food item at the grocery store has a frequency.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
so you could hold on to a loaf of bread and see if your body wants that.
You can see if it reacts to it or not. So if you hold up a loaf of bread and you test weak, that is your nervous system saying, I'm not going to be able to digest this. There is something in this that my body cannot adapt to. But if you don't go weak, not saying that it's going to be great for you, but at least your body can adapt to it. So it's not going to put as much distress on your gut, things like that.
Okay, so those that do muscle testing, do they test for every single supplement someone wants to take?
You can. I've had patients come in from all over the world that bring in their home pharmacies with them, where they have like 1,000 supplements. And instead of testing all of them, what I say is, look, if all of those worked for you, you wouldn't be in my office. So let's start from the ground up. Let's see what your body is not adapting to, and let's put a game plan together to make it efficient. And whatever I find on them, I kind of use my knowledge of maybe I would check this herb or maybe I would check this supplement and then kind of just take it from there. Because the goal is not to put people on more supplements, it's to put them on efficient supplements.
Okay, so I'm curious, is contact reflex analysis, is that part of muscle testing?
So that's a technique that utilizes frequency muscle testing. So there's many different techniques that do it. They all kind of stem from something called applied kinesiology that was started in, the 60s essentially, a little earlier than that. And as people came along, they wanted to make it their own. They wanted to, whatever they found um, from using muscle testing, essentially, they wanted to create their own technique around that foundation. And so many different techniques have basically budded off of AK, which is the mothership. And contact reflex analysis is the one that really changed my life. And the creator of that is the person whose knowledge kind of really opened my eyes to the world of frequency medicine and what's possible in healing.
And so is that the technique you use?
That's one of the main ones. Yep.
Okay, so I'm curious, are there certain conditions or symptoms that respond best to frequency-based therapies, or can this be used for anything?
It can be used for anything. Absolutely anything. So everything is frequency based. Your anxiety is a frequency. Your depression vibrates at a certain frequency. Your parasites, for your microbiome vibrate at a certain frequency. Any muscle strain, muscle pain, headaches, it all vibrates at certain frequencies. It's your cells out of electromagnetic frequency balance. And so then you can use frequency medicine like muscle testing to tap in and ask the body, okay, is this the priority? And if it is, then what is causing it? Is it structural? Is it chemical? Is it emotional? And generally, it's a mix of all three. And that's where I really, really love muscle testing because it tells you when to do what, essentially, which is a lot of time it's the bullseye for people because I studied a lot of functional medicine and I love functional medicine because they ask really good questions, but it's not specific enough for the person in front of me in my experience. What I mean by that is you can have two people come in and say they get tested and one of them has really like Lyme off the charts and a little bit of mercury in their system. Whereas the other person has a ton of mercury on blood work and a little bit of Lyme in their system. But when I muscle test them, the person with more Lyme is actually more reactive to the mercury, even though it's less on blood work. Whereas the person with more mercury is actually reacting more to the Lyme. So the frequency medicine really tells you when to do what, and it takes out the guesswork. It's more of making you like the biochemical individual that you are.
Okay, so you mentioned depression, anxiety. I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to sort of skip to this. That is something that a lot of my followers deal with just because it's something we talk a lot about on my page. So I'm curious if someone was dealing with depression and they're going to try to find someone that does frequency medicine, what would that look like? What would that entail?
As in, like, what would a treatment look like?
Yeah, I mean, they go to a doctor and like, okay, I heard about this frequency medicine. I heard that
Mhm.
you do it. I'm dealing with depression. Walk me
So
through what that would look like.
when I'm talking about frequency medicine is I really want to make sure people understand that every doctor has their own flavor and flair. So if you walk into my office, I might start out a little different than the person down the street. And the goal is that we kind of take different roads on the GPS of your nervous system, but get to the same end location, so to speak. And so I can only speak to what you would, experience when you walk into my office. And I am trying, if you came in with that, I'm trying to gather as much information as I possibly can about you. I am doing fingernail and tongue diagnosis. I am doing iridology. I'm doing sclerology. And from there, I go into muscle testing and start seeing, okay, what reflexes are off, what organs are stressed. And I'm gathering all this information because I like a ton of information. It gives me a good picture of the body essentially. And then I can communicate more efficiently of, hey, this is all going on, but I think this is where we need to start. So with anxiety, depression, you say you talk about it a lot with your listeners. I'm going to look at the digestive tract. I'm going to look at the endocrine system. I'm going to look at the vagus nerve. And I'm really, really going to look at emotional trauma in their past because emotions live in your physiology. They're not just in your head. And I always say emotions are like invisible luggage around you. You don't even know you're carrying it. But then when you do certain frequency medicine techniques that help go after the physiology of that, a lot of miracles happen. And so I'm looking at the gut, the endocrine system, the vagus nerve. I'm looking at the emotions, and then I'm just going to see through muscle testing what's priority. Where are we starting? And if you try to tackle everything at once, I've noticed in the last 10 years of treating patients, not a good idea. I'm trying to bowl a strike. I'm trying to hit the kingpin that takes out most pins for you. And then we kind of just take it. It's a journey, as is health, right? Health is a journey. It's really not a destination. There's no like place where you're going to get that's perfect health. It's just a lifelong journey. And so I really want people to understand that. So it's not like, hey, you're supposed to cure me in one visit. It's like, that's just not how healing works. And, it's God does the healing. The doctor collects the check is the saying that we have. And so we're just trying to be a vessel to your nervous system and really find what your main stressors and roadblocks are.
And so when you say you're looking at the digestive system and the endocrine system and those things, is that done through muscle testing or that's done through some of those other techniques you were talking about?
So it's both. So I would go and there's different reflexes on the body that when you put pressure like over the liver, so to speak, it activates the sympathetic nerves, and then you are actually able to test into is the liver going to be strong or weak, and then from there it's up to the doctor to say, okay, if it's not adapting to something, what is it not adapting to? You take a good detailed history. How's their blood sugar? Did they ever have a case of mono or some type of viral thing going on? Did they travel out of the country and this happened after? Maybe there's bacteria or parasite. And then I'll start getting my vials that have the frequencies in them and hold them over the area that we're, kind of looking at. So say the liver. And if it makes them go from weak to strong, that means that's the stressor. Now I got to find what gets them adaptable to this stressor essentially, and that's the basis of frequency medicine. So you can have vials like this that have the frequency of large intestine, frequency of small intestine, frequency of stomach, or you can actually go on the body and touch the reflex points, which were actually originally lymphatic drainage points for lymphatic drainage massages and stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay, so your vials, are they homeopathics in there?
A lot of them, yeah. A lot of them are homeopathic. Some of them have like a very tiny, minuscule amount of whatever you're testing, whether that's like gluten or dairy or something like that. But most of them are homeopathically prepared.
Okay, say you're checking the digestive system for gluten or something.
Hmm.
You muscle test with those vials.
Yeah, so I'd have like a gliadin vial and all the different components of gluten to see what they're reacting to, and I would put it over the digestive tract areas, whether it's over the stomach point, small intestine point, large intestine point, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, and I would see if I put this over any of those spots, does that make them go weak? Does that break them down, so to speak? And then
Oh,
from there, I'm saying, okay, well, your body or whatever is, we're working on, whether it's colon or stomach, it's not able to adapt to gluten or gliadin or whatever part right now. So we need to cut that out for the time being until your body tells us that you can adapt to it because you no longer weaken to the frequency of it.
okay. That makes sense. All right. So you just barely touched upon emotions a minute ago. And so let's talk about emotions because emotions are energy. And so obviously emotions show up in the body. And so how does frequency medicine address these?
Emotion, there's a great book called The Molecules of Emotions by Candace Pert. And what she says, and it's so true, is that every time you experience an emotion, there is a protein that's created in your nervous system. It's called a neuropeptide. And so, for instance, when you're a child and you maybe get grounded or you have anger or frustration or whatever it may be, in that moment, your body creates this neuropeptide and it gets stored in your physiology. And then over time, they just build and build and build until it comes out as disease or dysfunction in some fashion. And so there are many different ways of doing emotional work with frequency medicine. You've heard of EMDR, you've heard of EFT tapping. My wife does a ton of that, which is awesome. The techniques that I talk about a ton is called Neuro Emotional Technique, NET, which essentially what you're doing, it's so much easier to show, but I'm trying my best to explain. And so emotions are frequencies, as are your words, right? So anger, frustration, guilt, shame, when I say these things, they all have a certain frequency. And so as I say them, you can get muscle tested and I will say, I want you to think about frustration and then you muscle test. And they say strong, you keep going down the line. And every organ has hundreds of emotions from Chinese medicine, right? Like your liver is anger, frustration, depression, repression. Stomach is low self-esteem, oversympathetic, nervous, worried, ego, distrust, disgust. Heart is lost and vulnerable. And you can go down the list. And so when you're doing is you're having them think about their stress and they weaken because everyone's going to weaken to their stress. And then you find what organ it's held in, and then that clues you into what emotions they're probably feeling. So let's stay with liver because it's super easy. And say you go to the liver and that's where the body directs you off of muscle testing. And then you would say, all right, let's think about the concept of anger. Let's think about the concept of frustration. Let's think about the concept of depression. And whatever one we need to clear on that day for that person is going to weaken them. And so let's go with frustration. So then I would ask the person, is there any place in life currently that you experience frustration? And a lot of people will go right to it. Some people who are not in tune with their emotions will not go right to it. And then you have to ask the body essentially, where in life is it? Is it money, job, career, financial? Is it love, romance, and relationships? Or is it every other role you play in your life, whether it's husband, wife, daughter, son, sibling, friend? And then you kind of help them narrow it down because their nervous system has all these neuropeptides. It remembers everything. And it's essentially like having a conversation with the subconscious mind, because that's what rules your physiology, is really your subconscious. And so what you can do, I know this is a lot for people. People are gonna be like, I need to listen to this like 5 times more to really catch what he's
No,
saying.
you're doing great. I love it.
But essentially, say it was frustration with your boss. And then the thing about emotions, and this is my own analogy, is they're kind of like email threads. The current email would be like the frustration with your boss, but it's never usually the original event. And what I mean by that is your boss, I have the chills when I say, because whenever I get the chills, it's truth, right? Your boss is most likely reminding you of a father figure or a male earlier in your life, whether you were 5 years old, 6 years old, 10-year old, maybe it was a boyfriend in high school or a friend in high school. And you have to go back to the original event to really clear all these neuropeptides. So for instance, if we just did the frustration with your boss, and that's like the current day emotion, that's like having a pot of water on the stove and it's on max heat and it's overflowing. And what we're doing with that is we're basically just wiping away the overflow so that it doesn't overflow. The goal is to turn off the heat so it just stops happening essentially. And that would be like your original event. So we take it back. We ask the body through NET, let's shut the concept of an original event from ages birth to 10, 10 to 20, and you start saying ages. And whatever one the muscle weakens on is the age. And then I would say, okay, so say it went back to 13 years old. Could you imagine what type of frustration you'd be having when you were 13 years old? And then they kind of think, and we go to that. And then what I do, this is my own flavor, right? Everyone might do it a little differently, but I would have them do affirmation statements. So I would say, I want you to say out loud, I know the difference between my boss now and my father when I was 13 years old. They will weaken because they're not congruent with that. There's an incongruence there because they view their boss as their father when they were a 13-year-old child. And so then when you want to correct it, you have them hold the organ. In this case, we're talking liver. Hold the forehead because your emotional points are on your forehead. That's pretty typical. And you close your eyes and you think about what that frustration was as a 13-year-old, and you slowly breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And you go until the charge is kind of gone. It can take 30 seconds. It can take 2 minutes. It's per person essentially. And then you go and re-muscle test. I know the difference between the two people, and think of the frustration then, think of the frustration now. And if they remain strong, then we have broken that neuropeptide response, and that changes your physiology.
Interesting. Okay, well, people then could break thousands of different emotional chains then, I feel like, because you could have things from a little kid, teenager, adult. I mean, even something that happened yesterday.
Health is not a destination, it's a journey, and we are living the human experience. And we run with stories that we make up in our heads oftentimes, and the longer we don't address it, the worse they get, the worse we tell ourselves. And so if we're not doing something that goes after the physiology of emotions, I think we're really missing a big part of healing. And I don't tell people this replaces therapy and talk therapy. You know, some people do really well with that. Other people don't do well with that. And this is the thing that cracks the code, because your emotions you feel. And what people say after they've experienced NET, or there's some other techniques, but we'll stick with NET because that's the biggest main one. It feels like I took off a coat I never knew I had on. When I was in California, I would do this health class, and it was a completely question and answer based, and it was every Wednesday night. And we would do 3 demonstrations at the end of the night, a structural, chemical, and emotional, to show people what this is going to look like. It was a very efficient process. And I'll never forget, this is where the biggest emotional healing happened, because there could be 50 people looking at you on the table, and the deepest, biggest traumas would usually show. And I had a patient who came in from Catalina Island, and she was my demo. And we did one NEC clearing. I don't even remember what it was. And I saw her 2, 3 weeks later, and she came back and she had written 4 pages of how her life has changed since that night.
Wow.
And it's things like that that you can't unsee. Once you experience that, once I've seen it for 10 years now, you just can't refute it. It's so unbelievably powerful. And NET, that technique has a ton of functional MRI research. They have a big study that they did that shows on functional MRI that the amygdala and the fear centers of the brain with post-cancer survivors before NET, they would get like every year, like here's a follow-up for testing, and that would elicit emotions of their journey essentially. And then they did 5 1-hour sessions of NET. And then after that, they were showed the flyers to say, come get tested. And on functional MRI, their brain did not light up in their fear centers anymore.
Interesting. So what does NET stand for?
Neuro Emotional Technique.
Okay, and so depression, like we talked about earlier, a huge root cause of depression can be trauma. So is NET one of the best routes to go for trauma?
I would absolutely recommend it. I think that NET is a good bridge into the world. There's other techniques out there. There's one called QNRT that's really good. EMDR, EFT tapping, all those things are great. And I really want to emphasize that when you clear the trauma, really be intentional about filling that gap or that release space with positive, what you want to actually feel in your life. Pull forward the joy, the gratitude, the happiness, the feeling respected, whatever it is to you. Because I feel like sometimes in frequency medicine, this is one thing that I've noticed is the patients will start looking at you, the doctor, as like you're their savior and like you're going to fix me, you're going to do this. But it's not that. We have to do the work at home, and we really want to call in the positive and do the affirmation statements and prayer and things like that to really pull yourself forward, because NET and frequency medicine does a great job at clearing the physiology of the emotion, but it's up to us, the humans, to really go after what we want to feel and to really make a conscious effort of reprogramming our brain.
Okay, so I have a question for you about NET because I know someone who just did it, and she went through a traumatic experience and was having major brain fog, like just couldn't even think about the past. Would forget things the day of, just really bad brain fog. So how does releasing trauma and those emotions, how does that affect you physically? Because obviously it affected her physically, because when she was done, that brain fog was gone after she had done the NET.
Because your emotions really control it. I always say your immune system follows your emotions. And so if you have these neuropeptides that are not being dealt with, then you have a stress pattern, like a fight or flight response that you don't even know exists. And then your immune system, which then your adrenals that everyone loves to talk about, follows suit. And then you don't have balance. It's almost impossible to fully get balance. And so then it comes out as disease or dysfunction, because it's kind of like a duck on a pond. It seems calm on the surface and it's paddling like crazy underneath. That's how emotions that are unresolved really are in our system. And a lot of them live in our fascia. So a lot of people will feel tight. That's kind of why when I said like it feels like I took off a coat I never knew I had on, because your fascia kind of releases. But for your friend, like brain fog, for sure. I mean, think about if you're in fight or flight constantly. I've seen you talk about things like glutathione and turmeric and resveratrol and things that help like our barrier systems, right? Well, what if our emotions are disrupting our nervous system, which is creating a cortisol response, and then we marinate in our cortisol, and that's what's breaking down our blood-brain barrier, our lung barrier, the barriers of our system. Now, things like turmeric, resveratrol, glutathione, all that will help from the chemical side of health, but the emotional trauma is really what's going to normalize the cortisol response, and that's where frequency medicine is more of testing of like, oh, okay, they have a leaky blood-brain barrier. But then muscle testing brings us back to the adrenals because there's a cortisol issue. And from there, muscle testing then brings us to an emotional trauma that is causing the cortisol issue. And that's really how frequency medicine works. Is functional medicine has great question asking, but now frequency medicine takes those questions and really asks the nervous system, okay, this is what I think, but your body knows more than what I think I know. So where are we really starting with you? We're kind of, I love analogies because people really resonate with metaphors and analogies. And I always say that the body is like a garage door. Muscle testing is like the key code. If you have the right key code, which means if you can muscle test properly, then the garage door opens, the body opens and lets you walk right in and you can just ask the right questions.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our show sponsor. Spring is here and the weather is warming up, which means it's time to stock up on electrolytes to help keep you hydrated all season long. I'm so excited because we're having a big electrolyte sale and launching 4 brand new flavors. Blue Hawaiian, made with real fruit and naturally colored with blue spirulina. It's the perfect swap for blue Gatorade. Fruit Punch, which is sweet, fruity like our new kids' probiotics, but now in electrolyte form. Classic Lemonade, which is always a go-to. And Coconut Lime, a super refreshing option that feels like a tropical getaway. These 4 flavors join our lineup of 8 others, and here's the best part. Buy 3 bags, get the 4th free. That's like 25% off. And that's not all. We're also launching our summer protein powders. Say hello to Neapolitan, Tropical Paradise, and a reformulated Peaches and Cream, now without cinnamon and with a brighter, more peach-forward flavor. All of these summer proteins will be 20% off during this warm weather launch. It's time to take your taste buds somewhere sunny. Electrolytes and summer proteins go live April 28th through May 2nd at justingredients.us. Now back to the show. I had this discussion with friends recently, so I'm curious to see what you say. We experience emotions every day, right? We know sadness, we know happiness, we know frustration, anger, we know peace, we know joy, right? So emotions are just part of our everyday life, and every day you can feel a variety of them. At what point or when do you know that these emotions could be something that's impacting your health in a negative way?
That's a great question. And I'd say my answer to that one is unfortunately, people will only know that when they start getting symptoms. And I prefer just to know that they are affecting us every day and that it's good to get a monthly clearing for you and your health. It's the saying is that don't wait till you're thirsty to dig a well. It's a lot easier to stay well than it is to get well. So I think we should be doing this type of mindfulness every single day from a standpoint of prayer, meditation, journaling, all of that type of stuff. And then at least once a month, get a check-in from a frequency medicine person doing the emotional work because it's the invisible luggage. It just keeps building and it's better just to release it. And one thing I will say, because I'm a parent, I know you're a parent, the thing for me is that I do this a lot, obviously, because I want to get healthy and well, but because I show up better as a parent. Because when you have these unresolved emotional traumas or you have this frustration in current day life that you're not doing anything to really resolve from a physiology standpoint, I start parenting from a reactive standpoint and not from a peaceful, intentional parenting, conscious parenting. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that reactive person. And so that's one of the main things why I say we should be doing it is so that we're not reactive people, that we're coming from like a loving heart space all day, every day.
Okay, so before you said people should go once a month to get cleared, you said people should release it on a daily basis. So to you, because I've heard a variety of people talk about releasing emotions, what does that entail? What do you have to do?
So for at home, I actually, my first 2.5 years ago, my first video I ever did in my membership was releasing emotional trauma. And I talk about using Chinese pulse points at home and using EFT tapping. And so my wife, she does a lot of EFT tapping. She goes by Curiously Present on Instagram, and she it's helped me tremendously. Using tapping to what you want to release and what you want to feel. I want to feel joy. I want to call in gratitude and peace. Tapping with journaling and prayer, getting out into fresh air and grounding yourself, like all this stuff goes hand in hand. And so that's what I would say would be what I would recommend is the tapping, the journaling, the prayer, and just taking time to yourself for like an hour a day or as much time as you can. If I know people have busy schedules and stuff, but Sometimes you got to, for things to change, you need to change. And so sometimes we got to change that schedule to really put ourselves as a priority.
Okay, so another question then. Same group of girls, we were talking about this. One was like, I'm over 50 years old. I've never dealt with my emotions. I had a terrible like upbringing. And she was like, it's too much for me to unload. Like, I don't even want to start unloading my emotions. I don't want to go down that road and bring all those emotions back up. So is that something you commonly hear, or is that, a common concern of people's?
I don't really hear it too much because by this time now, people who come in to see me
Oh,
have
true.
been,
They want the help.
they want the help. So I don't really talk with many people like that. But what I would say is that, you know, I'm not trying to convince you of doing anything. You can't waste energy on people who don't want to help themselves. You can't love people more than they love themselves. And if they don't want to take the journey, then they don't want to take the journey.
Well, and maybe I should ask this. It's not too late for them to start.
Correct. It's never too late. Never, ever, ever too late.
Do they have to go all the way back to deep, dark trauma from years ago if they think they've put it aside?
So here's the interesting thing about frequency medicine is only the biggest, darkest, deepest things will show when the body's ready to let it go. So for instance,
Interesting.
like you might come in and you think that something that happened with you and your mom or dad when you were young is going to show up right away. But it might not because the nervous system might not be balanced enough to be able to release something. It's not stable enough. So maybe we have to chip away at some other things first to allow the body to balance enough to then be able to handle the biggest emotions that they need to let go of.
And chipping away at these emotions can then, or past things, can then better their physical health.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So I'm curious then about frequencies. To you, does being out in nature or grounding, earthing, does that help with the body's frequency?
For sure. I mean, Mother Nature, Schumann resonant frequencies, all that type of stuff is what our genome has been programmed to take in essentially. So it absolutely does. Is being out in nature and grounding, getting fresh air going to get you over your candida infection? Probably not, but like, is it going to rising tides raises all ships and it helps your nervous system balance? 100%.
Okay. So I'm curious then, life is stressful. Everybody's walking around with stress. And so, what are the most common things in our modern world that are throwing off the body's natural frequency? Is it stress in these hard times, or is it other things as well?
I would say, and this, if you would have asked me this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I probably would have had different answers. As I go in clinical practice, things for me change. Some of my answers change, and that's why we call it practice because you're learning as well. And so I would say that our mental stress and our emotional traumas, and that is what dysregulates us the most, first and foremost. Then from there, then I go into the environmental, the glyphosate pesticides, the EMF, the heavy metals, things like that. I think those are secondary. And the reason why I say that is because I've had people who will come in and they show for glyphosate, EMF, Lyme, parasites, Candida, Epstein-Barr, SIBO. Like, it's like a book report, and they are, for lack of better terms, an absolute mess. Their life is very, very difficult for them. And then someone else comes in and they have all the same stuff I find on them, and they have like zero stress in their life, and they do totally fine. And they're like, I don't have any symptoms. So what's the difference? And the difference I've found is the emotional trauma and how much of it is affecting us.
Interesting. Okay, so you just touched upon EMF. So let's talk about that because that is a big buzzword out there on social media. And so are EMFs affecting the body?
110%.
And because they're affecting our frequency?
Yep. Yep. They dysregulate our frequency. They're the man-made EMFs. Obviously, like the sun EMF is good, the earth EMF is good, but the non-natural, as they say, the NN EMFs are absolutely affecting us. Their wavelengths are different. They're way faster than what our natural flow of our body is. Like we should be like the ocean and like, rhythmic waves. And you got 5G and Bluetooth and radio towers and all that stuff that just bombards at billions of times a second, unidirectionally in one way only. And it's a constant distress signal. And our gut flora knows that. That's why we have so much gut issues. I think EMF also is maybe the number one cause of diabetes because the constant distress signal. And so what happens with distress signals in us is our body secretes cortisol. What does cortisol do? It raises your blood sugar. And now you have to secrete insulin to counteract it because our body is a brilliant mechanism of checks and balances. And then over time, you get resistant to your insulin. And yes, diet comes to play, not exercising, all that stuff is still there. But the only thing, if you look in our history, when diabetes was really going up, actually the only thing that was directly going up with it was not sugar intake, it was actually glyphosate and pesticides. And so I think that there is more of an inflammatory component to the rise in diabetes beyond sugar intake and our diet. And I think that EMF is one that is like, I mean, it just gets harsher and harsher the longer we're alive because we're in the great race for electronic dominance, so to speak. 4G wasn't enough. We need to get to 10G. And unfortunately, people who have listened to me talk before always hear me say this thing is for all the stuff, whether it's your car, you're in your house, something that makes your life more convenient, you have to ask at what cost to our health. You have to. And not many new modern day things pass that question.
Well, so I was just going to say, with all these modern day things, we're bombarded with it. And so it's not really realistic to even say you have to avoid all of them because you can't. So how do we lessen the effect of these EMFs then on our body?
So there's a few things that I use in our house. One, I call them grounding bags. They're little like Tesla crystals in a bag. They're little pink underground water mined crystals that are very grounding. And so we keep them around our house. It's literally, I don't have one on me right now, but it's a little bag and you can put it up to your chest and tap the bag and it helps ground you like you're standing on the earth. I think those are phenomenal. I do have this next to me. This is called an SRT optimizer. And this generates the frequency of healthy human cells. So I've used these with patients, seen miracles using them. I use a lot at a time, but this is one. I'll keep it over my heart, over my brain, in my pocket, just around me.
Does that just fix like the heart frequency, the brain frequency back
All
to
of
its
it.
correct levels?
It has 108 primal frequencies. So it has like the ocean, the ground, the earth, all of that type of stuff. And it has all of our how I was saying that all of our cells should have a certain frequency. This carries all of that. So as you put it around you, your body just draws in on it constantly. So it's called sympathetic resonance technology. And sympathetic resonance, some of your listeners will probably understand this, is like when females live together, they tend to menstruate together, right? Their cycles sync up. That's what this is doing for your cells. So the more you can have it on you or around you, the more rising tides raises all ships. It just helps your mitochondria. I use it for kids with autism, use it with kids with ADD, sleep issues. A lot of my members who they've emailed in saying that only when they sleep with one of these under their pillow does their aura ring say they get into deep sleep. So that's kind of fascinating
Interesting.
too.
Because it's getting certain cells into their regular rhythm.
Yeah, it's kind of like imagine your cells are going all over the place. And then when you put this on you or around you, they go from this to this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so is that your favorite tool to use? Because I'm thinking like traveling. I
Yeah.
travel a lot and
We travel with these constantly. So my wife and I and our two kids, we have these around us or on us, and we travel with a grounding bag.
any other things that you like to minimize the EMFs?
So that's from a technology standpoint. I also have this laser that I really enjoy, but we can talk about that later if you want. But for EMF specifically, hydration, crucial, and antioxidants. So we talked about the glutathione, the resveratrol, the turmeric. I'm really big on resveratrol. Like for some reason, that one I like more than the rest. Molecular hydrogen, really good for EMF, antioxidant. And then from a physiological, this is more of the functional medicine standpoint, MTHFR, right? You talk about methylation and all that stuff. Those B vitamins is what insulates, along with fish oil, insulates the around your nerves, the myelin sheath, and that's what EMF really can break down. So, the right B vitamins, the right fish oil, antioxidants, and hydration, I think.
Okay, which is so interesting because you're talking about foods and supplements, and I talk about foods and supplements all the time, but I never really talk about them in an energy sense. So all of these foods and supplements can help the frequency of cells then.
For sure. Absolutely. My number one, I would say, this is because we're on the topic. Everyone always asks me, okay, you talk, because I talk about supplements all the time. You talk about all these supplements. If you had to choose one on a deserted island, what would it be? And I think mine would be black cumin oil.
Interesting. See, and I know that as like something that brings down inflammation but how do you see it energetically? What does it do for the energy?
It cleans your blood. So healthy blood, healthy hormones. It's anti-mold, fungal yeast, virus, parasitic. It has good nutrients in there. But it really just builds the body. It's anti-biofilm, it's anti-heavy metal, it's antioxidant, it balances blood sugar, anti-SIBO, candida. It just it's kind of like that thing that they say it's great for everything but death. And I agree with that. It's like really good for like everything.
Okay, so good to know. All right, so I'm curious. We were talking about stress and we got sidetracked into EMFs and all of that. So back to stress, because if stress is like the number one contributor, you're saying to people's health, we can't avoid stress. So are you just trying to teach people to manage their stress then?
I think that we start fearing things too much instead of having gratitude for all the tools that we have, because that stress of all of that is going to create more stress. You know what I mean? And so the goal is to do things on your day to day basis that helps you with your stress, basically nervous system balance. Back to the prayer, meditation, tapping, using SRT optimizers, things that just help the nervous system balance, which will then allow you to process your stress way more efficiently because you'll have the capacity to do so.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to start saying, because I always tell people, like, you can't avoid stress, but we've got to learn how to manage stress. But I'm going to now say manage and process the stress because it's processing it so that doesn't become trapped in our emotions and our cells and cause health issues.
That's right. One of the jokes that I always say is like, it's not like we can all like float down kale rivers sipping ginger drinks and stuff like that. Like that's just not reality. And so we have to put things into perspective. And that goes back to realizing that, hey, we have these awesome tools, which is really why I started doing the Instagram in the first place, because so many people wanted this type of information of like, what do I do? I'm lost. I'm so overwhelmed. I go on Instagram. I see 10 people saying 10 different things. And I say that those people, you're just missing the point. Just grab onto one thing that resonates with you, one thing that feels good in your gut and your heart, and try that. And stop stressing about having to know everything or guilty of I didn't know this before with my kids when I should have done this. Like the past is the past. The future is going to be the future, and we only have the present. So just do as best you can to process and have the capacity to be the best version of you.
Ooh, I love that. And especially, I always try to tell my followers, like, one little step at a time. It gets too overwhelming, which will then cause the stress if you try to do it all at once and learn it all at once. Let's just do one little thing at a time. Okay, so along those lines, though, whenever I start talking energy to people, people just become so skeptical or think it's just such baloney. And so, what do you say to people who are skeptical of energy or frequency based medicine?
A few different things. The first thing I'll say is that it's like gravity. It works whether you believe it or not. That's one that I'll say. But another thing is, everything that we do is frequency. You're living in your household. Do you know how when you turn on the lights, how the circuit works and how it turns on all the lights? And then people are going to say, no, but you do it anyways, don't you? Yes, I don't question that. Some people have this tendency to go into more like biblical, like this is devil's work or, all that type of stuff. All of this is given to us by God, all of it. And so, I'll have that conversation with people. I think that frequency medicine, muscle testing is one of the best gifts that God ever gave this planet. because it's just to help people and to really help people and just be a vessel to help that person. And so again, there's times in my life where I really wanted to convince everybody that like this is the only way, this is that. And then I started realizing that not everybody wants it. Not everybody's ready for it, and that's okay. And I'm just looking for people who are looking for me. And if they don't want to believe it, they don't want to try it, that's okay. There are millions of other people who do want to do it. And so I've learned to kind of just love people where they're at. And if they're ready to, take a dive into really seeing what their physiology has to heal and stuff, people like me are around and we're there to support you. But if it's not for you at this time, then that's okay too.
Well, okay, I'm trying to wrap this up, but I got a few final questions. So, if someone is dealing with a health issue, and so many are dealing with like unknown health issues, I feel like, they go to the doctors, they're not getting answers, but they still feel so tired and things like that. Would you tell people when they're starting to figure out their health and their health issues to start with frequency medicine, start with the energy portion?
I mean, I might be a little biased because this is what changed my life and what I've done for the last decade, but I just don't think there's anything that competes with frequency medicine. And I don't think that you have to be a chiropractor like me or a naturopath or an acupuncturist. I think every practitioner should be using some form of frequency medicine in their practice, whether they are DOs and MDs. I don't even like, I used to say this all the time is there's a time and place for Western medicine, right? Trauma, things like that. Nothing holds a candle to it. And maybe you have an infection that you need an antibiotic. Wouldn't it be nice if you were muscle tested on what antibiotic is probably best for your physiology more than just the bell curve of here's what helps most people? I even think that that should be in place because there are times when we need that stuff. It's not like frequency medicine, the way that I practice, is the only medicine. Yes, it gets people over, chronic illness and prevents it from happening in the first place. But people are going to be people. They're going to break an arm. They might need some type of medication. It would be nice to know exactly which one their physiology would prefer.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I don't know a ton of people that go and do frequency medicine. I have a few friends, and other than that, I don't know a lot of people. And so, if listeners are like, okay, I want to go try this, I'm going to start working on my emotions. How do they find somebody? Are they purely Googling frequency medicine doctor?
The best way is obviously through word of mouth. And if you type in frequency medicine doc, probably not much will come up. And so what I've done is actually I've made a PDF of most people that I know in different states or countries from around the world. And so if they go to my Instagram, there's a post that I did with my wife that you'll see that if you comment, refer, we'll send you that list. The list is in my membership. I believe it's in my link tree. You're more than welcome to take that. That's one of my goals is when I couldn't possibly see so many people and I started getting thousands on my wait list. And what I did originally for the wait list was create my membership. And then I ended up opening it up to the public. And so in that has all my knowledge in video format. We have a private Facebook group, and in there you can meet people in your area. There's thousands of people in there. They have their referrals that they like locally as well, because I want to make that community because even within holistic medicine, frequency medicine is also like its own little niche, so to speak, and it can feel for some people very lonely. And so I wanted to create community. So through the membership, you can get access to that. Obviously, if you want the PDF, you can find it on Instagram. That's the best that I've been able to do. Again, I'm only one person. There are other people out there that I don't know who are doing frequency medicine. And I've added people as I've gone along. People like, hey, this person was phenomenal. I think you should really include them. And then I'll look them up, talk to them, add them to the list, and just create this referral network. So that's the best that I would know. All the other techniques that we talk about, like NET, they have websites that have practitioner locators on them. So that's another way of doing it. But if you want people who I know who are going to practice similar enough to me, right? We all have our own flavors and flares. Then that PDF that I created is probably the best.
Okay, that sounds like an incredible resource. But NET and acupuncturists and people like that, that is under the umbrella of frequency medicine, though, correct?
For sure. For sure.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And your membership sounds amazing. So is the best place to find that on your Instagram or your
Yeah.
website?
Yeah. So just a little bit more about that. I talked about the Facebook group. All my videos, I have hundreds of videos in there. And I just created Dr. Charlie AI, which basically has all of my knowledge in it. So you can go and type any question you want, and it in 10 seconds goes through all my videos, tells you what my answer would be, and then what videos you can watch of me talking about it, which is pretty cool.
Oh, now that is cool. That is very cool.
Yeah, so that's been a really cool feature. I literally just added that. And then, yeah, we do weekly live Q&As every Tuesday if I'm in town, which I am most of the time. And then, yeah, it just keeps building the library off of Q&As and different topic videos. So you can find that on my Instagram. I just changed my username back to drcharliedc. It used to be 2.0 because 2 years ago, I got shadow banned for talking about vaccines on my original account. And then I built my new account 2.0, and then I just recently went back to the regular Dr. Charlie DC. So in my link tree on my Instagram page, you'll find everything about the membership. Dr. Charlie or drcharliedc.com would be the website, which you can also find through Instagram. And then I also do our own podcast, which Lauren Johnson. And so her and I have been doing a podcast called Red Pill Your Healthcast for the last 2.5 years as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you are a wealth of knowledge. It is fun following you. I did watch all that craziness a few years ago when people were getting shadow banned, but it was nice seeing doctors just stand up for what they believed in, and even though it was really hard. So thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for all that you're teaching people, because I love that you are just trying to help people feel better. And you just want them to live a happier life, and so I really appreciate everything that you're doing, all the free education you give on your social media as well. And so thank you so much for being here. I always end my podcast by asking my guests what they have found to be the best ingredient to life. And so I'm curious to know what you would say.
What do you think I'm going to say? I'm going to question you.
Frequencies. I don't know. Positive frequencies. I don't know.
That's pretty close. I would say the number one ingredient is gratitude. Gratitude, living in the present, having gratitude. We've all had past stuff that we wish we can, redo, or why did it happen to us? But gratitude. And that, I think, is the way forward in so many ways. And literally gratitude is, love, and infinite love and gratitude and things like that is Christ consciousness. And that is what heals everything. And so I would go, number one ingredient is gratitude.
I love that. And going along your lines then, gratitude is an emotion then that has frequency, which can heal.
100,000%.
Which a lot of people don't realize that.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, man, I could ask you like 10 million more questions. We could delve into so many things, but
we'll have to do another one.
I was going to say, I need you on another one because we could talk so many things. I have a friend who's really big into energy and cancer, and we didn't even touch upon any of that. And there's a lot of things. Anyways, we'll end it at that. And again, thank you for everything that you're doing. Everyone go give him a follow. Go listen to his podcast. Like I said, you will learn so much. He is a wealth of knowledge. And again, thank you, Dr. Charlie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember to subscribe to the Just Ingredients podcast to learn more about your health and good ingredients to life. Plus, get daily tips at just.ingredients on Instagram.